All right, welcome back to episode 5 of the Football Is Groovy Podcast with Dev and Matt. This is Matchday 15 that we're going to be covering and some extra stuff. So, yeah, yesterday was a couple games. This is the December period, so it's been chock-a-block full of games. And yesterday there was one very surprising result, which was Arsenal-Chelsea, but there were a couple games that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I think the first big one is obviously first game of the day, probably the one that most people are looking forward to in terms of the two clubs' positions in the table. Obviously, that being Manchester United and Leicester.
Yeah,
I think, me personally, I thought whilst Leicester have been playing well in the last couple of games, obviously dominating against Tottenham, I thought United would have it in them to beat them because obviously they've been on this run now of excellent form. But yeah, 2-2, so points shared. Who do you think will be most unhappy with that?
I'd probably say Man U, because Man U had the games in hand, so they really had the opportunity to just get a little bit closer to Liverpool. It would have really brought the gap just a little bit down, and I think in the long run that would have helped a lot. So the winner really from this game was Liverpool, because two teams that are now a little bit further away from the top.
Yeah, 2 points further each. Obviously, Liverpool playing later today against West Brom, so pretty certain that's going to go one way and one way only. But being the Premier League, you never know. But it is Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, that game, or Man U versus Leicester, was quite I'd say it was a pretty good game. It was nice to watch. A lot of attacking football, a lot of chances. And I think Man U really probably kicked themselves afterwards because they had a lot of opportunities from the first minute that Rashford had a couple chances. There were some missed headers, missed shots, and they looked pretty good. They looked deadly. And when Cavani came on and his assist for Bruno, it was good. So it was still great attacking football, but I think just missing a little bit of clinical finishing.
Yeah, I think that was the nice thing about this game, was that both sides looked like they could take it.
Yeah.
So it was a fairly even competition between the two. So I guess from that perspective, you could say it's the fair results because neither of them deserve to. Obviously now, each person will have their own opinion on that. But for me, I think United should have taken it based on purely on the opportunities that they did have. Yeah. And the class that they have in their forwards with Rashford, Martial, Bruno, even Greenwood, Daniel James, obviously now he's kind of playing a bit more of a role in the side compared to what he's been doing for the last couple of months. So I think United and Oli are starting to kind of find some kind of rhythm. Obviously they've been in this good run of form now, so I think other clubs will have to watch out for United at the moment. Yeah,
definitely. And probably one of the differing factors or major differences between these two teams is just the depth of the Man U squad. I don't think Leicester has the depth to compete for the title this season. I think they've got a lot of good players, and they can obviously put in a good shift and really make a team have to work for the points, like we just saw now. But I don't think that over the entire season that they'll be able to compete, whereas Man U clearly does have at least a little bit more depth to the squad.
I agree with that as well. I think, obviously going back to what you're saying about squad depth, look at when Leicester won the title. Yeah. Then you could argue their team was better now than it was then.
Sure.
But you need to then keep in mind the performance of the other teams in that season. Tottenham were challenging for the title and they finished third.
Yeah.
I mean, the meme of only Tottenham can finish third in a 2-horse race. So, I mean, I think if you look at the other teams performing now, obviously you look at the table and how open it is, literally from 1 down to 10. Yes, Leicester are playing well. Do they have what it takes to go all the way against Liverpool, City, Chelsea, United, Tottenham, who are playing well? Even if you look at Everton, Southampton, who are threatening, probably not going to win the league, but certainly that fourth UEFA spot for Champions League, the Europa League spots. So I think a lot
of competition.
I think it's going to be tough for Leicester to maintain this form that they're in.
Yeah, so that being said, I think also in this game, at least Vardy's goal to me was very against the run of play.
Yes.
At least in the little bit of build-up. Leicester had some decent possession in that time, and you could see in the break that I don't know. I just felt like there was going to be something there. Credit to him because he pulls out really well. He came away from the defenders and they were all sleeping. Everybody's sleeping, watching Vardy get into space and take the shot. But he does shank it a little bit, and you can see it comes off the side of his boot and then just deflects in. So I think it was really unlucky. I don't think that they deserve to have that goal scored against them, but a goal's a goal, and it does come down to the striker getting in the right place.
Look, I guess at the end of the day, the role of a defender is to protect your keeper and not let the opposition get the shot off.
100%.
So you could argue that by the fact that Vardy managed to get the shot off, whether he shanked it or not, it's a failure by the United defenders.
Oh, 100%.
So I agree with you. Obviously not Vardy's best finish, but like you said, a goal is a goal, and Leicester will take it.
Yeah, nothing wrong with the goal. Yeah. So I think Wan-Bissaka, I think it was, that it deflected off of, will be quite disappointed in that. So that's probably the biggest result of the weekend, I think, or so far.
Certainly in terms of the title race.
Yes, that impacts the top 8 teams, I'd say. So, but other than that, then there's the Arsenal-Chelsea game, which...
Before we get on to that, I just want to make mention of the Fulham-Southampton game.
Fair.
So, obviously, Fulham have been in poor form and Southampton have been one of the informed sides. Match finished 0-0, Fulham grabbing a point. Lucky have a goal ruled offside for Southampton right at the end, which would have obviously then won it for Southampton. Rightfully so, ruled offside. But I think Fulham would be happy with that point. I think that's a bit of an... I don't want to call it an upset, but that's a surprise for Southampton not to get 3 points against a side like that when they've played well against the bigger teams.
Yeah, and it's actually a couple draws for Southampton now. Which is not doing them any favors. I mean, it's a lot of points that are being missed. Probably they would have liked to capitalize on this against Fulham.
Yeah. But for me, that was maybe one of the surprises of the weekend, was that Southampton couldn't overcome one of the weaker sides after putting in such good performances against the big ones. Yeah,
no, that's absolutely fair.
But then
the
shock of the weekend.
Yeah, the absolute shock.
I don't think anyone saw this coming. I think Arsenal fans will be euphoric and in this like absolute sense of euphoria right now of we beat Chelsea, London is red again. We've seen it all. So I think the next game is going to be massive for them because if they can now start putting that run together and slowly start climbing up the table, because the fact that guys are comparing them to other teams in relegation battles now,
it's not a good look.
That's not where a club like Arsenal should be. As much as I don't like that red kit, I think now is probably the best. I mean, what more motivation do you need than beating Chelsea?
Yeah, I mean, it could be. We could dive a little bit into the actual specific goals because one was a penalty. First one's a penalty, which I'm not going to take it away from them. Penalty is a penalty, so that's fine. Second goal, probably a little bit of individual brilliance. Yeah, just a fantastic free kick from Xhaka. So nothing.
I was watching, and the thought popped into mind was how many Arsenal fans celebrated Granit Xhaka scoring. Because obviously everyone knows with the red cards that have been going on in the fights and the arguments with his captaincy, a lot of Arsenal fans have been out for blood.
Questioning him. Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see how many Arsenal fans supported him scoring that goal.
I think they'll take anything that they can get right now.
I think they will.
But yeah, it is probably a valid point whether the club can rally behind their captain right now, and there are some debates around who should be captain. But yeah, that goal, great free kick. I would argue individual brilliance. You don't see that all the time. And then the third goal, which looked more like a cross to me.
I think Saka got a bit lucky with that.
Absolutely.
I don't think he was going for goal there.
No, you could see his reaction that he was like, oh, wow, okay, I'll take it,
So I guess if you look at the 3 goals overall, maybe you could argue not a convincing win. 2 set pieces and then a lucky third one. Yeah. So nothing really from open play, no breaking down of Chelsea defense and then actually getting in. So maybe 3-1 is a bit of a deceptive scoreline in that regard. But all credit to Arsenal, they did play well. They showed signs of a team who can play good football. So I guess now it's all about can they carry that momentum forward now onto the next couple of games.
That's the thing. I think probably the word is I'm very skeptical of this result because Chelsea, I don't know if you saw that one stat that they've dropped so many points against the top 6 teams or something along those lines.
Very poor.
Their results against top teams has been very poor. And I think that should be taken into consideration with this win, because obviously all credit to Arsenal, but I don't think that this shows everything. I think Arsenal played well. I don't think that it's not like we can see for sure that they're going to continue this going forward. But like you said, if the momentum continues, then yeah, that'll be a sign. Yeah. But I wouldn't take anything from this result and say Arsenal are back to winning ways. I think I would still put them in, Arsenal's in deep trouble, and they don't look like a team that can stay out of relegation zone.
Yeah, I think you need to consider the Chelsea side as well. Obviously now, Lampard being allowed to make new signings now after their transfer ban, bringing in, obviously Ziyech didn't play, but Pulisic, Havertz, Werner, you obviously got guys now who are new to the side, including Chilwell and Thiago Silva. So could you argue that that's not a settled team? I think you could, just based purely on the fact that it's a new group of players who now have to play together at the highest level. Obviously, all of them individually, you wouldn't doubt their abilities. Yeah. But it's obviously a different thing than having to work together and then string together results. And like you mentioned, their results against the top 10 sides has been far from impressive. So
yeah, there's a lot of factors to take into consideration. That's why it's not really a very straightforward result. I think probably we'll be able to make more judgment of this over time. But yeah, because both clubs are in strange positions, and I don't think Chelsea's as convincing, regardless of not having a settled team. I think it's still their current playing style and everything that's happening at Chelsea is still questionable. So there's a lot to see.
I think Lampard and Chelsea have got a bit still to work out before they really click. But I think when they click, because I'm sure they will, a team like that will click eventually. I think then that's going to be a very formidable lineup.
No, absolutely, I agree. But yeah, so that was definitely the shock result of the weekend.
100%.
Did not call that at all. Would have said Chelsea would take it. But yeah, so good to see Arsenal getting a win, and hopefully we can see them playing the football that they should be playing.
Maybe I hope not. Personally, I could agree with Arsenal maintaining this poor run.
So maybe you keep them at 10th.
Yeah, keep them 10th. Let's just see them in the bottom half of the table and keep Spurs fans happy.
It's just interesting enough on that game, Aubameyang didn't play.
No, left out of the starting lineup. And
how much do you think that has an impact on Arsenal winning the game?
Well, it's tough because arguably he's their best player without Ozil on the field and all of that. So, he is their talisman. He's the guy who came in and he was the big guy. Everyone knew Aubameyang. When they signed him from Dortmund a few years ago, everyone was like, oh my gosh, Arsenal have signed Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. This is ridiculous. But he started well and he's just fading. So, obviously, you could say he was replaced in the lineup with Emile Smith-Rowe, a youngster. So maybe that kind of mentality shift. You've now got a guy who is Arsenal through and through, wanting to play for his club. Yeah. Obviously, he's got Bukayo Saka on the other side now, so you've got two young wingers. Then up front, you've got Martinelli, who he's shown that he is one of the promising stars in the Premier League at the moment. So maybe that kind of drive and passion from the youth is kind of almost maybe what sparked the win. Maybe Aubameyang just is lacking that between him, Lacazette, Pepe. Maybe there's no one challenging them because obviously they might not see these youngsters as challenges for their positions. So now to have Smith-Rowe and Saka and Martinelli doing well, hopefully that then draws the best out of Aubameyang, Lacazette and Pepe. Yeah,
that's a fair point. I mean, I find it a little bit ironic that Aubameyang doesn't start or doesn't play and Arsenal win. Because it's basically, you could draw a conclusion that Arsenal hasn't been winning because Aubameyang hasn't been scoring.
Could do. So, but you could also make that argument that Willian hasn't had the impact.
100%. But yeah, it's interesting, and I think, like you're saying, letting the youth take a little bit more control will be interesting. And I think it's worth a shot. Probably playing this sort of, or going forward with this idea in a couple more games to see whether the big stars will try and jack up the act.
Well, that'll be the interesting to see is what kind of lineups Arteta goes with now for the rest of these festive fixtures.
Yeah.
Because maybe this was a once-off thing, just an experiment. Maybe Aubameyang had some kind of injury that no one was made aware of. So I think it'll be interesting to see, do the youngsters retain their place in the side? And I think, to be fair to them, they have to.
Yeah.
It's their best results of the season, so how can you not start with the exact same starting lineup?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see and to follow now over the next couple of weeks how Arsenal do and the lineups that they put out.
Yeah. Yeah, so those were the big results yesterday. Now today, we just had Leeds against Burnley, which was, again, a very boring game of football to watch.
Affair,
yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Leeds won 1-0. Bamford, thank you very much to my my fantasy league team. Thank you very much. And so now next is West Ham versus Brighton.
Yeah, that's on at the moment, and if I can just get a score for that quickly. Still currently 0-0 after 42 minutes, so kind of going the way that I would have thought it would go. I think both sides have shown promise this season, but then they've also got that inconsistent track in them.
Yeah.
So I think West Ham will take it being at home. I think they have slightly better players on paper, so I think they should take it 1-0, 2-1 kind of scoreline. But Brighton could also pull out a surprise.
This is one of those, I think you never know. Someone, if you decide to pitch up on the day,
you don't put a conservative bet on this match.
No ways.
No.
Nope. Skipping the bets for this weekend.
Yeah. But yeah, then obviously probably two of the traditional top six in action later today. Got Liverpool again at home to West Brom. I can't see West Brom coming away with any from that at Anfield.
No. I'm seeing a good 4-0 here.
Yeah, I think it could get messy. I think it all comes down to how friendly Liverpool are feeling. But yeah, I don't think it's going to end well for West Brom.
No.
Could West Brom pull off a miracle?
No.
I don't think so.
No chance.
I mean, I'd love to eat my words right now and come back next week and say I was wrong.
Yeah.
But
no, I don't see it.
This Liverpool side is just too good.
Yeah.
They don't make those kind of mistakes.
No, not at home. And I think they will be smiling after the Man U draw.
Big time.
And going, okay, this is now another opportunity to just put more pressure.
100%.
Just lay it on. Such a relatively easy fixture for them. So, I would see them coming away with it. And then after that, you've got Tottenham against Wolves.
Yes.
Which I think is probably one of the more interesting games, or the most interesting of today.
It's certainly going to be interesting because obviously, you think to Wolves last season.
Yeah.
And Wolves at Molineux was a tough fixture.
Yeah.
But they haven't looked the same. Obviously, they've lost a few players, whether it's through selling them like Doherty and Johnny Otto leaving the clubs, or Raul Jimenez just now obviously being injured now. So I think they found it tough now to maintain the level that they're playing. Obviously, they're relying on Daniel Podence, who's come in, Pedro Neto, Adama Traore. But if you ask me personally, those are not guys who make an impact for a full 90 minutes. They either play well for the 60 minutes or they come on for 30 minutes, and that's when they do well. Podence has been a bit of a surprise to me. He's actually shown some real class.
Yeah.
So hopefully, I think their chances of winning lie within him. But
Jimenez will be in the stands. So when he gets back, it probably will lay a little bit of pressure off opponents. But I agree with you on that. Yeah,
I think being Wolves, you can never rule them out.
No, of course.
Being Tottenham, you can never rule Tottenham losing out.
Yes.
But I think this is an absolute must-win game for Tottenham.
Oh, yeah.
Three bad weeks now in a row. If this gets into the fourth week, then you really start getting worried.
This is trouble.
I think Mourinho will put out a strong side, obviously. But I guess it'll come down to the player mentality and their attitude. How badly do they want it? How badly do they want to stay in the Premier League title race? Because I think if Spurs don't win this now, if they are to remain in the title challenge, it's going to be very tough for them to catch Liverpool, and will almost be a win every single game to stay in the race. Yeah,
I agree. And I think Wolves is a tough team. I think defensively it's not easy to put a lot of goals past them.
No.
And they can also score. They have the firing power.
But they've been struggling to score though.
Fair,
but obviously you can probably put that down to Jota and Jimenez not being there anymore. Obviously one going to Liverpool, one being injured now.
Sure.
So it's going to be an interesting fixture. I think obviously both ends of the table are now influenced by this. So it's going to come down to who wants it more. And I think Wolves might have that fight in them. I think Tottenham might be lacking a bit of that drive. Obviously, they had a good win midweek against Stoke City in the Cup.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting one to watch. I think it's either going to be an absolute cracker of a game, or I think it's going to be one of these sloppy Tottenham look poor kind of.
I can see last-minute goals in this game.
It's Tottenham, of course you can.
I can see...
No prizes for that.
I can see two goals in the last 10 minutes against Spurs.
For against Spurs?
Against Spurs.
But...
Yeah, we'll have to see. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting result, and I'd like to see Tottenham win this game just to stay in the fight at the top, because it is ruthlessly competitive right now.
You have to win every game.
It is, yeah. You're dropping so many positions if you just lose or draw at this point. I mean, Man U and Leicester draw, and they draw one game, and Everton takes it into second place. So you really don't know who's going to come up from behind. Exactly. And two weeks later, you look again, and it's...
Well, you look at Tottenham.
Exactly.
1, 2, 7.
7, yep. So, yeah, it'll be an interesting game to watch. Pretty excited for that. Yep. And, so that's the sort of wrap-up of the weekend. So...
Big news. Pochettino to PSG. I think that for me is the headline of the weekend. I think whether or not he accepts it, I've seen reports saying he has, reports saying that it's not done yet, but assuming that he does take the job and he does end up managing PSG, I think, now we were talking a bit about this before we started, but he's a manager who's shown that he can do something special with the club. Obviously, he's taking Tottenham from where they were, being a mid-table club now, almost challenging for the title, the Champions League, and what have you, but you made the point of he hasn't won anything yet. Yeah. So has he proven himself? It's tough to see. Maybe the squad will win, but then is the manager winning it, or is the squad winning it?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that comes down to in this. One, so Poch used to play for PSG.
Yeah.
So that's worth taking into consideration. Olgana used to play for Man U. It just looks a little bit better on your CV, I would imagine.
You're tied to the club.
Yeah, so having someone that used to play there, you got a little bit more bondage there with the actual club. That being said, it's a pretty different club to when he used to play for them.
True, very true.
The investment that's gone in there and the type of players that are there now, I think probably one of the biggest trouble or issues that he'll have is managing a dressing room of, I don't want to say divas, but probably high
superstar celebrities,
superstar personalities. And it's how do you manage a room of players that have such big egos?
Yeah,
I think my judgment of it is that coming from or watching him at Tottenham, I don't think he can do that. And Tottenham doesn't have a dressing room of egos. They might have one or two. Maybe Eriksen was probably the more noticeable ego. I'm not gonna bash players, but that's just my sort of gut feeling on it. I don't know if Poch can do that. I personally thought Thomas Tuchel was doing a fine job at it. I think how he got to the Champions League final, and sure he just lost it 1-0. It's not like it was a big difference. I think it's quite harsh that he was sacked on Christmas Eve, but will Poch be able to take them to the Champions League final? Because here's the thing, if they're sacking him and he's getting to the Champions League final and doesn't win, what do you expect? And he wins the I'm going blank on the French league.
Ligue.
He's winning that with PSG. He gets the Champions.
Lyon on top of.
But last season.
Okay.
Last season he won it with them. He got to Champions League final and he still gets sacked. If you are Poch and you're going into this, that's basically like saying you're going to win the Champions League or we're going to sack you.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pressure in that, and I don't know if he's the right manager.
Look, it's obviously a big step up now from managing Tottenham. I think it's a completely different challenge.
Yeah.
So he's obviously been out of management for a bit now, so you don't know what he's been doing on the side, but I think, like you say, his biggest issue will be the dressing room.
Yeah.
Obviously, now you've got serial winners with like Mbappe and Neymar and Di Maria. So he has a manager coming in now who, yes, I think he commands the respect of a lot of players just by the stature and personality that he has. But, you know, when you guys got like Neymar, who is a title winner, he's a celebrity.
Yeah.
And he says, well, I've won titles, you haven't won.
Yeah.
So maybe he does run the risk of losing the dressing room. I know when he before he left Tottenham, there were those rumours of him people saying that Pochettino had lost the Tottenham dressing room, that they didn't respect him anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that is the biggest risk for him. I think if he can control that, then I think he's got plenty of titles coming his way, and I think it's going to be a fantastic relationship between himself and the club. But yeah, obviously this is all just hypothetical, and we have to wait and see, does he get taken on?
Yeah.
And if he does, what then? Because I also was reading earlier, a lot of people have been saying that if Poch does take the job, then his first acquisition will be Dele Alli. They obviously had a good relationship at Spurs. I know how you feel after that. The reaction is quite clear and obvious. But
okay, he's definitely not the manager for PSG. Yeah. If I see Dele Alli in a PSG kit, I think I'll lose my mind.
Oh, but what about a front three of Mbappe, Dele, and Neymar?
I think he's probably bringing Dele because he wants a good seat warmer for Neymar.
Wow, keep Neymar, keep him warm.
He wants to, keep him warm. No, I don't know. That would be an interesting first signing though. But right now it's obviously all hypothetical, and we'll just have to see.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what other managers they're talking to, but I wouldn't put it past them to probably hire someone that's maybe from inside the club that's been there. I think that probably, in my opinion, that would be the best bet on this.
Yeah, I'd like to see Pochettino there. I'd like to see him managing again, and obviously I'd like to see him winning stuff. But football is football, and you can't guarantee anything with it.
Yeah.
So you just have to wait and see.
Yeah. Yeah. So now comes that time of the day where I have to pose a question, or at least talk about the question that we were going to talk about, or that we decided we were going to talk about.
Yes, that one.
Which is, right now in the Premier League, we're in terms of box-to-box midfielders. You've got Sissoko, Pogba, and Fernandinho.
Fernandinho, obviously past his prime now. Kind of, you think of him in his prime as that box-to-box midfielder where he could be effective, whether it's on his own goal box or pushing all the way upfield. But I think there are some very good box-to-box midfielders in the league. I think. Well, actually, let's see what your thoughts are. Let's see where you want to take this.
So let's phrase it as, if you have to build a squad where you can only pick one, maybe it's a futsal side, five-a-side, and you've got one sort of box-to-box midfielder that you have to pick. Who are you going to pick?
Well, if you're talking futsal, then Pogba.
You're right.
Just he's got the ability. I think if you look at Sissoko, he's the machine. He's the powerhouse in that Tottenham midfield who wins the ball back, starts attacks, or the likes. You probably also compare Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. Obviously, both are now deeper lying midfielders, but they both get back, they both get forward, they can both start attacks, they can end attacks. So, but I think if you really want to go five-a-side and go from that angle, I think Pogba, just because he's got the creative ability in him to be the more attacking side of a box-to-box midfielder.
I think I agree with that. Probably looking for more creativity in the player than brute strength and just defensive ability. So I can agree with that Pogba will take it in that sort of setting. But then obviously in a full 11-on-11 pure soccer match, here's where it gets a little bit interesting, because Fernandinho has, I would probably argue, the best track record of the three. If we're talking trophies and we're talking just general performance and career in the Premier League, then he's got the best track record. But I would probably say Sissoko is the most underrated, and I think probably would do if, at least from a defensive point of view, he would do a better job than I think. Oh, Pogba for sure, but Fernandinho, it's a little bit tougher.
I think Fernandinho would by far take the defensive side of it. I think he's willing to put in that hard tackle, and he's obviously got that Brazilian fire in him, so he's a bit more willing to commit to a tackle. I think you look at Pogba, he's obviously more concerned with playing higher up the field than he is with the defensive side of being a box-to-box midfielder. So I think it comes down to what you're looking for, and I think if you want almost a hybrid, obviously Sissoko is far off the creative skills of Paul Pogba.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of what he offers you, in terms of winning the ball back and then playing the simple pass to get an attack started, I think I would pick Sissoko.
Yeah, because Sissoko strikes me as a good player, really in the mid.
Yeah.
I think he's good at getting around and just marking men. He seems like he has a good awareness of space, and at least in the structure with Mourinho's defense setup,
Yes.
he looks like he has a very pivotal role in the defensive structure. And I think he's probably the most flexible player of the three, I would argue. I think you can push him high and he's going to do relatively well. You can put him quite low and maybe even put him into centre back if someone gets a red card.
Yeah, if push comes to shove, you could definitely slot him in there. My heart would be beating very fast as a Tottenham fan if I saw Sissoko drop into a centre back position, but he's also played on the right side of the midfield, so obviously then using his pace and strength to kind of be that brutish winger. So I think in terms of versatility, I think you have to go with Sissoko on that front.
Yeah.
Obviously Fernandinho has been playing as a centre back a couple of times, covering for injured centre backs at City.
Yeah.
So obviously then that's a different kind of versatility now as opposed to Sissoko. But I think if you look at then Pogba on that front,
it doesn't come close.
You wouldn't be confident in him as a centre back. You wouldn't be confident with him as a winger. Maybe in the number 10 role, but I think he's shown that he hasn't. To me personally, he hasn't got what it takes to be a controlling number 10. He needs someone else to pull the strings, and he is then kind of the maestro behind the curtain.
Yeah, I think probably playing in more of a 6 position. Yes. But I think if you want to go with the most reliable player, and you want to go with, I'd say the one who's going to take control the most, I think it's probably Fernandinho.
Yes.
I think he's really calm on the ball, or he was really calm on the ball. He had this sort of just presence and aura that you weren't too worried about. If he was put in a situation, he just seemed to get out of it. I mean, obviously everyone knows his career, so he was a great player and still is playing. But the point is, I think probably the most reliable pick, if you've got to pick one, you would probably say in this prime, go with him. But I think Sissoko is an interesting pick, depending on who's around him. I think Sissoko might be an interesting addition to the defensive structure.
Yeah, I think Sissoko offers that nice hybrid version of a box-to-box midfielder where he can get forward, he can get back. So he's almost like the perfect utility player.
Yeah,
he's the kind of player that almost any manager wants, because you tell him, okay, this is the job I need you to do, and he'll do it.
Yeah.
So I think from that side, maybe if you had to compare prime Fernandinho from a couple of seasons ago to Sissoko now, go with Fernandinho because he would do the Sissoko job, but just much better.
Yeah.
But I think today I would go with Sissoko, but just. Probably almost base it on the pace side of things, that he's quicker than Fernandinho and he can cover a lot more ground.
Yeah.
So in terms of a pressing game, he can be more effective.
Yes, that's why it probably does come down to the players that are around him. Because the combination of Højbjerg and Sissoko, to me, seems really good. They're both very flexible. So if the one pushes the other one or presses the other one, can kind of stay in a more deeper role. So that works pretty well. Whereas if I'm remembering correctly, I think Fernandinho played sort of a very solo back, very deep position.
Pretty much that shield in front of the back four.
Yeah.
And then with De Bruyne, Silva, the other midfielders, then obviously being the more attacking side of it.
Yeah. I would think I'll probably, to sum that up, I would probably go with Fernandinho just to spice it up a little bit. We should make a FIFA team. Do
you really want to do that against me? Do you really want to ridicule yourself on YouTube? So big question now in the United game against Leicester. Marcus Rashford was brushed by an opposition player and fell to the ground, screaming in agony, it would seem. But watching it back, you could see minimal contact, if any. And certainly not enough to warrant that kind of a reaction. And one of the commentators then mentioned this is the part of football which he despises. And obviously diving has been around for ages, and it's very subjective to say, did he dive, did he not? But sometimes there are clear-cut cases where a player dives, and obviously that's when VAR will make that kind of decision as well. Obviously in terms of penalties. But is diving taking over? Is it becoming almost a tactical point of a player's game to try and win the free kick, win the foul, win the yellow card against an opposition player? Dirty tactics kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it clearly is. I think probably one of the best examples, not in the Premier League, but just in general, I think it was Portugal against Sweden. I might be wrong, but it was one of the Nations League's games. And one of the right wing got into the box. Guy comes in for a tackle. It's a foul, but the winger doesn't go down. So he tries to keep the ball and keep pressing in, but he's kind of fumbling. So you can see that he took the hit and he just decided not to dive, right? Yeah. And then he shanked the pass and it just landed up being nothing. And then they didn't go back for the foul, right? So it's like, well, if he had dived, it would have been a penalty.
But for me now, then there's the close line between you have a legitimate foul made on you and you then go down, or you then stay up. And the line between that and if someone just brushes past you or does not even touch you and then going down, so then it becomes the question of, are you diving or are you actually then claiming the foul that has been made on you? And I think obviously they go hand in hand together, but a lot of players who now get fouled and don't go down and then nothing happens, you can see the frustration. So that almost leads to now I need to go down. Yes. If I want the free kick, then I need to go down. And that then evolves from actually going down on a legitimate foul, and then that evolves into diving.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, at least I think to everyone, it's clearly turned into a game of, well, just dive. Just dive, because you're not going to get any, or it's only going to benefit you. If the ref calls it a foul, which most of the time they'll call it a foul, it could result in a card for the opposition. It could result in a penalty. And I think this has kind of made the game a little bit soft. Or not a little bit, it's made it very soft. And I think it's probably the biggest barrier to entry for non-football fans, because a lot of people complain about why soccer players always dive and they always, scream like girls. At least we hear that a lot, you know. And that's like, I would probably put that as, without a doubt, the number one reason as to why non-football fans don't like soccer or don't like football. Is the drama. And I always compare it to other sports, like rugby, and it's like, oh, well, that guy falls, he gets pretty much a broken rib and he still wants to play. He tries to fake that he has a broken rib. So I'm not saying that, football should turn into an absolute blood sport, but I think there's nothing better than seeing a clean game of football that just flows and there's not much, the more the whistle's being blown, it just makes it slower and it's harder to watch. So the quality of football goes down.
Yes.
That's a given. But it's also in terms of just the name of the sport, the image of the sport, the ethics. There's a whole bunch of other aspects around it that I think it just tears down, and it really looks bad, because you have this whole generation of people that are watching these football players that dive and will complain about anything, just to spite the opposition, not because it's actually an honest foul.
Yeah.
So that's my little gripe with it. But I think in terms of the how this affects the game in terms of productivity and the ref's job, I think it also makes things a little bit more difficult.
It does. I think, it's one thing to be a ref and you have an understanding of the rules of football and how that works and all of that. And it's now a completely different thing, because now it comes down to the ref's ability to judge a person's character and their actions on a personal level. So it's not clear cut, okay, that was a foul, studs up, yellow card or whatever it may be. Now it's, you went down a bit easy. Maybe I'll go take a look at the monitor, see if it was a penalty, wasn't a penalty, whatever it may be. So I think now it adds a new level of complexity to the concept of refereeing.
Yeah.
Which obviously, as is the case with anything, when something new comes in, it takes a while to adjust. But diving has been around for
since
years.
the game. Yeah.
So, and I think refs are scared to call out divers. Even you're watching on TV and you see it's a blatant dive. You can tell that the man's gone over way too easy. There wasn't even contact. But for a ref to say something like that, maybe it's a bit tough. I don't know. But
it's interesting because I wonder what would the repercussion be if the ref gave too many yellow cards, right? Like, let's say that he called fouls that were not fouls. And is there any kind of repercussion that after the game they say, listen, that was a bad performance. You called too many fouls that were not fouls, right? Now swing that the other way and say, well, you didn't call enough. You called too many fouls that were not fouls. Like, why are you not penalizing from the other direction and saying you are basically just being too soft? So, yeah, it's. I think, personally, my opinion on this is that a potential solution would just be, if the player goes down, it's one of two options. It's either a foul against the player that supposedly fouled, or it's a foul against the person that's diving.
Yes. And
I think there has to be some sort of stricter punishment on players that dive, particularly in the penalty box. If you go down, it should, and because you know how you can see when a player is claiming the foul. We can all see that.
You can tell.
If the ref is judging that the player is claiming the foul and he determines that it's not a foul, then it's a yellow card. It should be that simple, because if it was the other way around, it would be a yellow card for the defender.
Of course.
So you're trying to cheat the game. You're trying to cheat the ref, cheat the opposition team. And it just doesn't look good, I think, when a team wins by a goal that they shouldn't have scored, or a penalty they shouldn't have scored. So...
yeah, and that's obviously one of the things that VAR was introduced to root out, was those kind of mistakes. But I don't think it's doing its job. I think refs and the TV refs, I think they're a bit too shy still to actually award yellow cards for diving. I mean, yes, you see it every now and again, a ref will whip out the yellow card for someone diving, but that might be one yellow card in a game for diving, where there might be 3, 4, 5 incidents of diving in the game, but only one punishment. So I think it comes down to the subjective nature of it, of having to determine from your personal side, I think that player dived. Because there's obviously... it's a tough thing to determine, especially on the fly as a ref. You don't really have the luxury of being able to watch it from up high with the replays on, obviously now with VAR, but diving is not something that gets looked at unless it's a possible penalty. So... it's tough. Obviously, you don't want to see something like it in the game, because it detracts from the essence of the game. You don't play football to dive and to get penalties and to get yellow cards for opposition players. So when you get players or teams who go that route of trying to manipulate the game through this negative way, it puts a serious dampener on things. Yeah,
no, 100%. But that is probably everything that we wanted to cover in this week. And it's going to be interesting to see the games that are unfolding this evening.
Yeah, lots of football coming hot and fast. Yeah,
so we'll be back probably middle of the week, because there's so many games now.
Got another match week to cover, so...
cool.
Alrighty.